I was going through an old parts bin and I found a hub for a 8mm deck. I wonder if it'll fit my EVS7000. Let's take it apart and find out. I may have just won the lottery. I found this in a box of some old parts. This looks to be the take-up hub used on the EVS5000 and EVS7000 Sony Hi-8 decks. The one that the gear cracks. And this gear does not appear to be cracked. This is an obsolete part that has not been available for a long time. When I picked it up, this is normally part of the hub, this thing had literally melted. I'm going to show you the bottom of this. I didn't do it on camera, unfortunately, but I spent about an hour trying to separate these two pieces. There's a magnet on the bottom of this that's attracted to the metal on the other side of this. That's what regulates the torque. You can see it's still magnetic, but take a look what happened to the magnet. The magnet, it's an organic type magnet. You know, it's like, it's not, you know, it's weird because this is like, it's almost like a glue that's oozed out of it. Maybe the glue that held the magnet to the base here. But this was all gummed up in here, and I spent about an hour soaking this to get it to a state where I might be able to use it. So I'm going to go and dig out my EVS7000 and remove the hub, the one that I've fixed by kind of melting it with a soldering iron to make it work, because if this gear is the right gear, I've won the lottery. I have an EVS7000 that is in mint condition, other than the fact that the stupid gear breaks. They break on like 100% of these bloody things. It was just a piss poor design, and I should have bought some more spares when they were available, but I didn't. And of course the part is not available. Now, anybody who knows what an EVS7000 or an EVS5000 is, it's a Sony Hi-8 analog deck that has digital sound on it, and they're very sought after. So I'm going to go grab mine and we're going to take the top off, and I'm going to see whether this gear here is the correct gear. And if it is, I'll put it in. So this is the one that breaks right down here on these units. Very common problem. I'm going to take this out if I can. And I don't know if it's the same gear or not. It might not be. This one might have been out of a camera. I'm just looking at the teeth, and it looks like the... maybe I'm not in luck. I think the teeth are finer on this one. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a very similar looking gear, but if we look down at the teeth, this one here has much bigger teeth, much more coarse, right? I thought I was going to be in luck there, but no such luck. But anyway, these are the gears that crack on these EVS7000s. And you'll see where I repaired this one, if I can find it. There, right there. There's a crack in the gear right down here. And what I did is I heated up the plastic. I took the piece apart like this, took this piece out, and I was able to heat it up, touch it with a soldering iron, and push the pieces together. So the unit works. It just goes click, click, click when it's running. But you can see very, very common problem on these things. Very poor design, and I thought I was gonna have a winner here, but I guess this hub, maybe I had pulled it out of an old camera thinking before that it was the right one, and I looked at it and realized it wasn't, and I just put it in a box with old parts. So and it sat there and deteriorated, and finally the magnet material went bad. But anyway, that's beside the point. I thought it was going to work, but as you can see, just looking at the teeth, the number of teeth per inch, or per the pitch on the teeth, these look to be about 1 millimeter. The other one, they look to be about 2. Oh well. Thought it was going to work. It wasn't. Anyway, might as well do something on this EVS7000 now that I've got it here, because I think you guys have seen this thing before. But this was the top of the line Hi-8 editing decks that Sony had for consumer use. And the neat thing about these ones is that they supported not only the AFM hi-fi stereo track, but they also supported the pulse coded modulation track. So I think, since I've got this thing here, I'll show you guys how that works. So for this demo, I'm going to use a tape that I recorded. This would have been recorded in 1996. So, 22 years ago. These were some evaluation shots that I shot down at Queen Elizabeth Park in Vancouver. I was evaluating an EVW300, which was a professional Hi-8 broadcast camera, a great big one that goes up on your shoulder, that I was looking at purchasing for my production company. So when I took this camera out, I took it out and I did some shooting with it. The sound that's recorded on this tape is, that camera would record both in AFM mono, and it also had PCM digital on there. So I probably had both tracks running digital. So the sound that we hear is just the natural sound. I'll show you guys the picture, because this actually had a very good picture, this camera. So I can show you guys this footage because this is my own stuff, so I don't have to worry about getting popped for copyright. But of course, this is just the natural sound that was recorded along with the video. So the EVS7000, which is this recorder, and the EVS5000, no, the 5000 didn't have it, sorry. The EVS7000 and the EVS3000, and I think the EVO50, I think, was the model number. That was the professional version. They had the ability to add sound after the fact. So for example, if I take this tape, I can rewind this tape. I can add digital sound to this tape while keeping the original soundtrack intact. And how it's done is I cue the tape up to where I want to start my dubbing, and I'll do it after my color bars are over, after all my dropouts on the beginning of the tape are done. Okay, so I want to start dubbing sound at this point. So I select audio dub. Oh, got to release the safety switch on the tape. Okay, so I cue the tape up. I pause it. So I hit audio dub, which is that one, and now I'm in the audio dub mode, but I'm paused. And I'll get my audio source. I have to select my input source that I'm going to use, which is line number 1, I believe it's on. There we go. And I can select my audio level. So my PCM record level is here. All right, and I've got my audio level controls here. And I pick my music. Let's see what I'm going to record on here. So I get my music cued. I'm ready to start recording. I just have to release the pause button, and then I can start my music playing. And we'll look at the picture when I'm doing it, and it cuts off half the picture while this is recording. And we'll see here that the meters are indicating I'm recording, and it says audio dub stereo. And again, back to the picture. Now that's normal that it's showing in black and white, because it has to mute half of the picture as it's recording, or it's writing the PCM soundtrack. So I'll let this record here for a minute, and then we'll play it back. So how this works, turn this down so I can talk over it while we're doing this. How this works on the 8mm system is, if you remember VCR 101, on a conventional VCR, the wrap is 180 degrees. You notice that the tape guides are much greater than 180 degrees. I think it's 220 if I'm not mistaken, or 210, maybe it's 210 degrees. The video portion is still 180 degree wrap. So the video starts, I'm looking for something to point with here without actually touching the drum as it's spinning now, but if we look at where the tape approximately makes contact with the drum, this is our angle. Our video track is recorded on this section, but as you see, there's still another 30 degrees or so of wrap. This is the area that is used for the PCM sound on the 8mm and the Hi-8 system. So on an 8mm tape, there's only about, I think, 6mm or so, or just over 6mm of the tape's width actually has video information on it. The other, I think it's about 1.5 millimeters of space on the, I guess it would be the top edge, because the scan starts on the bottom edge of the tape and it scans up towards the top at a diagonal path. It ends about here, and then the next track starts. That area that has no AFM or video, because of course the analog audio on a Hi-8 and 8mm was recorded as an FM signal. The blank area was reserved, and what gets stored in that area is timecode information for the decks that have timecode, which this also has. We'll write timecode to this. Once the music is done here, I'll write some timecode to the same area of the tape, because there is no timecode on here yet, but I can add it. But that extra area was used for timecode writing and for PCM sound. This tape actually does have timecode on it, but it has the professional timecode that the consumer deck could not read. But the consumer deck can, of course, add additional timecode. So when this finishes here, I'm going to stop it and I'm going to rewind the tape, and then we're going to go back and we'll add timecode to it as well at the same time, so you guys can see how that worked on this format. Because this is a feature that a lot of people didn't know that the 8mm format had. See, if I go and try to display, I don't think there's timecode on here. I may have already written it on here before. Let's just look at the display. I can remember where the button is. There's a button here to toggle the display. If I can remember where it is. Counter select, yes. Oh yeah, I've already written timecode to this, so I don't need to write it. So I went and actually rewound this tape after it was shot on the camera, and I added timecode to it. So this is our time-coded portion. But it's done the same way as adding audio dubbing. I would rewind the tape and I would take it back to the beginning and hit timecode right, and it would play the entire tape, and it would put timecode on the tape if there wasn't timecode. But I've already done it on this one, so I don't need to show you guys that, but it does have timecode. The reason that they put timecode is you can edit accurately to one frame. If you had two decks that had timecode capabilities, you could edit frame accurate on these. And if you connected them by the I guess it was a lank, I think it was a lank on this one, yeah, a little Control L. If you connected two decks that had timecode, you could edit. And I had an EVS7000 as well as a 7000. Okay, I can stop this now. Okay, and that's done. I had the EVS5000 that I used as well as the 7000. What I used to do when I was dealing with Hi-8 stuff, because I did deal with Hi-8 editing gear there for a while, I used the 7000 as the playback machine for my source tapes off of that EVW300 camera, And because it had the PCM sound, I would have my wireless mics and stuff were going in. I used EVW300 for wedding work. I had beta equipment for professional stuff that was required on beta, but I used an EVW300 for wedding work because I needed. The trouble with beta was you only had 20 minutes on a tape on Betacam, and you could get 2 hours on a Hi-8 tape. And for wedding work, the Hi-8 was more than good enough. So before this is going back before we had nonlinear editing, right? This is going back to the mid 90s, before nonlinear editing was actually affordable. I had nonlinear editing at the time, but I only used it for certain things that required the cross dissolves and so forth and special effects, because the computers of the day, to edit in high quality, you needed about a gig or 2 gigs, which was your file size limit of Windows 98. We didn't have, NTFS file system or exFAT. Everything was FAT32. So you could record up to 2 gigs maximum, and at the highest quality mode, in broadcast quality mode, basically 2 gigs gave you about 4 minutes to work with. And besides the fact that my 9 gig hard drive, which would only hold about 5-6 minutes of video, 8 minutes of video, something like that. It was ridiculous, but that was like a $4,000 hard drive. So the nonlinear stuff was used for like the photo shoots and the opening shots of weddings and stuff. But when I did the actual ceremonies, it was all done. It was done tape to tape. We had 2 cameras and 2 playback decks and a record deck, and usually it was we had a EVS. Well, I used to use the camera for playback, not the EVW300, but I had an EVS. I used this one as a playback deck, and I used another camera. I think it was a VX3 as a playback deck, and ran them through an MX1 mixer. Then I could do double, like cut back and forth, and they were recorded on this deck, because then I could go back after the fact, or they were recorded on the EVS7000, and then the tape came out of the EVS7000 and went back in this deck, and then I could go and I could dub music in and stuff. And on playback, I could fade the music up and fade the music down on playback, and mix the standard audio level, which is what I'm going to show you when I rewind the tape here. So we'll rewind this tape. And on playback, I'll turn up the sound here. And right now, here's my time code just started. That's where I started writing the time code. And then I go over to here. Now, right now, we're just hearing the standard audio because I haven't turned the PCM on yet. I haven't started my dub. And at the point where I started the dub, the music should kick in, which is right there. And I have a switch that I can switch to standard sound, or I can mix the 2 of them together. So here's the mix, and I can control the mix sound. As you can see here, if you look at the control, I can turn the standard audio down, or turn it up. So when I used this deck for when I was editing, when I made my master tape on the EVS5000 and then brought it back into this one, added the music after the fact, then when I was running copies off onto VHS, I could, okay, we need music, we want to bring the background sound up. Bring the background sound up. Take the background sound down. And of course I could just select background sound by itself, which is just the hi-fi soundtrack. Stereo, of course, if it was recorded on a stereo machine. Or I could select mix. And of course, here's the picture. This was the EVS300. And this is what a broadcast camera gave you in terms of flexibility. Watch some of these shots I've got here when I was evaluating this. You know, it's standard definition, but this is what a real camera lets you do. Watch the focus. And we'll roll the focus and bring the background in. That's a real lens. Okay, the crappy little consumer cameras of the day that my competition was using, that was shooting stuff with you know, home equipment, they couldn't get creative like that. That's why I got the big bucks when I was shooting weddings. I got really big bucks at the time. I think I was getting like $2,500 a shoot, and I was booked for like a year in advance. So it was all the equipment. Anyway, that's the EVS7000, how it can dub digital sound. And the sound quality off this thing is not quite as good as a DAT machine would be. It's 8-bit companded, so, and it was 32 kilohertz. So the frequency response for the audio dub went up to about 15 kilohertz. So it wasn't CD quality. In fact, the analog soundtrack, the analog stereo soundtrack, technically could have a higher frequency response, but because it was AFM, you had the same limitations as VHS hi-fi and beta hi-fi. You could hear the companding, warbling and stuff in the background sometimes. It wasn't as clear. It was very good, but the PCM soundtrack sounded better, much better. Anyway, I just figured I'd show you guys this thing, considering that I thought I was going to be able to put a new hub. As you can see, this hub works fine. The one I fixed works fine on this, and for the amount that this deck gets used, it really doesn't get a lot of use. It gets used when I have tapes to archive, because this thing has a time-based corrector built in, so it does a really good job of playing back Hi-8 tapes. It's probably one of the better players that was put out by Sony, or I think any company. But as you can see, the picture, even shooting it off the plasma, it looks pretty darn good. I gotta remember, this is analog equipment. This was recorded 22 years ago. This tape's been sitting for 22 years, and it's looking pretty good. I should put this tape up against, I went out with my, when I upgraded everything to digital, a few years later in 2000, I upgraded everything to digital. And I should put this, I did some evaluation shots on a JVC GY-DV500, and I've got the same type of shots on that when I evaluated that. I should put this tape up against that and look at the difference. I think most people would agree that the analog recording on Hi-8 has a more natural look. It's just the colors just pop on it. Even though it's not as clear as digital, the colors look better on it. I should do a demonstration of it, not shooting the screen obviously, but capture this tape and capture stuff from my evaluation shots from my GY-DV500 and look at the difference in them, because the digital is clear, but I think the color is better off of the analog tape. I don't know, maybe it's just playing tricks on my eyes, but this camera actually did look very good. But hey, it was a $12,000 camera, so that's big bucks. Anyway, that's a look at the demo of the EVS7000 dubbing on 8mm in digital sound. Thanks for watching.